A flight that covers just 127 miles should take well under an hour in the air. For Iran's national team at the 2026 World Cup, that same journey took 5 hours once security and immigration checks were factored in, and they had to make it the day before a match and again immediately after. Their coach went on to describe his squad in words a manager rarely uses about a tournament his country fought to reach. Days before their decisive final group game, that situation finally shifted. Here is how it unfolded. If you want the full story behind one of the strangest situations in World Cup history, subscribe and stay with this video, because every detail matters. Start with the setup. Iran qualified for this World Cup on merit. Like every other nation in the competition, they were drawn into Group G alongside Belgium, Egypt, and New Zealand, a genuinely winnable group that gave them a realistic chance to advance. But Iran carried a backdrop no other team had to manage. Their country had been engaged in a roughly 3-month conflict involving the United States and Israel, with only a recent truce reached before the tournament began. Iran became the first team to participate in a World Cup hosted by a country with which it was at war. That alone made their participation logistically complicated from the very start. Then came the decision that shaped everything. The original plan based Iran in Tucson, Arizona, like any other competing nation on American soil. Iran's base camp was moved to Tijuana from Arizona weeks before the tournament, despite all 3 of their group games taking place in the United States. This was not a minor change. It meant that every single time the team needed to reach a match, they were crossing an international border rather than a state line, with passport control, customs, and security screening attached to every trip. The rule that turned this into a trap was FIFA's own. FIFA's 2026 World Cup regulations state in Article 18.3 that each team shall travel from its team base camp to the match venue 1 day before match day, MD1, and in exceptional cases on MD2, and shall return to their team base camp after the match on MD+1 for the other 47 teams. That instruction barely registered, since their bases sat inside the host country. For Iran, it meant repeating a full international border process before and after every fixture. The first match showed the human cost. Iran opened with a credible 2-2 draw against New Zealand at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. The charter from Tijuana International Airport to Los Angeles International Airport covers roughly 127 miles. The typically short trip took 5 hours the day before its first match against New Zealand, team captain Melli Taremi said. Then the team was ordered to leave the country right after the final whistle. Coach Amir Ghalenoei did not hide his frustration. "They didn't even give us time to recover," Ghalenoei said, according to the Associated Press. "After the game today, they said to us, 'You have to leave immediately.'" He went further still. "I think perhaps our team is the most oppressed team in the whole World Cup." Iran captain Melli Taremi said that FIFA President Gianni Infantino had visited the team in the locker room after the game, but Taremi made clear he believed FIFA needed to do more. The second match brought the same pattern. Iran played to a 0-0 draw against Belgium, also at SoFi Stadium. Ghalenoei said his team played a beautiful game under the worst possible conditions. Ahead of that fixture, Iran had asked to enter the United States 2 full days early to prepare, and that request was denied. In response, the Football Federation announced a formal complaint to FIFA. The Football Federation of Iran believes these restrictions are inconsistent with the principles of providing equal conditions for participating teams and may affect their technical preparation, the federation said in a statement. The difficulties extended well beyond travel. Several members of Iran's traveling delegation, including support staff, were unable to secure visas to enter the United States, and Federation President Mehdi Taj was prevented from traveling. Player Mehdi Torabi had to visit the U.S. consulate in Tijuana to get a new visa after the first match. The Iranian Federation also reported that ticket allocations originally promised to the team were revoked, and that media access for Iranian journalists faced its own restrictions. Every other qualified nation operated under a single, consistent set of expectations. Iran navigated a separate and far more complicated set, match by match. The United States pushed back firmly on these criticisms. White House FIFA Task Force Executive Director Andrew Giuliani said the country had been more than fair. "We've gotten visas for all 31 of the players, gotten visas for every coach, so that way there can be competitive balance," he told ABC News, adding that the players were welcome for the hospitality. The Department of Homeland Security insisted the overall security measures and protocol remained the same. Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin told Fox News that an individual with direct ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had tried to board the Iran team's flight from Mexico. The security rationale offered for the restrictions. The scene around the matches reflected how much tension surrounded Iran's participation. Several hundred members of the Iranian diaspora protested outside the venue, while many fans inside turned their backs during the national anthem in a gesture of dissent toward their own government. The pre-revolutionary lion and sun flags were plentiful despite FIFA banning them from World Cup stadiums in a decision that was upheld in an emergency hearing on the morning of the game. The crowd carried layered and sometimes contradictory feelings about the team on the pitch and the country it represented. Behind the logistics sit players managing real physical demands. Recovery after a high-intensity 90 minutes is not a luxury at this level. Ice baths, proper nutrition timing, and uninterrupted sleep in a stable environment are basic building blocks of elite preparation that every other squad had consistent access to. The Iranian side has had to miss training sessions due to traveling the day before their matches. Iran's players, by contrast, had to factor border crossings and security screenings into that same recovery window. The squad also carried a quieter weight. Players wore 168 pins and left a note in the locker room calling for peace, referencing the victims of an attack tied to the Minab school, a detail that underscored how much sat behind their participation. There is no clean precedent for any of this. Previous World Cups have seen disputes over fan visas and scheduling, but those involved peripheral elements, not the repeated act of border crossing required simply to train and compete. Iran's situation effectively meant their team was a guest in two different countries simultaneously throughout the group stage, a circumstance without a clear parallel in the nearly century-long history of the competition. Then came the turn. Ahead of the third and final group match against Egypt on June 26 at Lumen Field in Seattle, the rule was eased. For the Iranian team's third match in Seattle on June 26, the team has been permitted to come into the US 2 days before the match, a DHS spokesperson said. The Iran team will still be required to leave the day the match ends. Andrew Giuliani framed the change as planned all along. This was planned on our end, he told the Associated Press, explaining that officials had watched how the first two movements went before extending the extra day. Iran captain Alireza Jahanbakhsh summed up the team's position plainly. We don't ask for much, we just ask for the same procedure as for all the other 47 teams, he said. Iran was not entirely alone in this, as Egypt also had a Seattle travel request denied before later being granted entry. The stakes only rise from here. A run into the knockout rounds would involve tighter turnarounds and longer trips, including a journey of roughly 1,200 miles to Seattle, which would make the old 5-hour border model nearly untenable from a sports science perspective. The situation also raises a structural question for FIFA. How Melli hosts World Cups protect a team's basic logistics when geopolitical tensions exist between that team's nation and one of the tournament's hosts? So the question for you is this: does this change represent real, lasting progress, or simply a one-match accommodation? Tell me what you think in the comments, and if this breakdown gave you the full picture, subscribe so you do not miss what happens next.